Yeah,
Things
we're
off.
gonna get started. We're doing our first alumni experience with Kelly Rudder and Tyler, and I think we're ready to go. Kelly and Tyler, it's to you.
Okay, awesome. Oh no, my clicking control doesn't seem to be working.
Do
Tyler,
you
can
want me to advance? There you go.
yes. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Kelly Rudder. I graduated from Kirtland High School back in 2018, and I was on FTC Team 8120, the Electric Hornets, throughout high school. I'm also a 2017 First Dean's List winner. I am currently at Yale University in Connecticut, where I'm studying computer science. I'm in my junior year now, and I am president of First at Yale, which is the official First alumni chapter at Yale University.
All right, and then to introduce myself real quick, my name is Tyler Cheating. I graduated from Aurora High School back in 2017, and I was the team captain and lead software engineer of Team 6022, TBD, to be determined. We were one of the 2016 World Champion teams, as well as a 2017 Inspire Award finalist at Worlds. And I'm currently a senior at Case Western Reserve University here in Cleveland, Ohio, studying computer science with a minor in business management. I also work on a part-time basis at Rockwell Automation during the school years as an embedded software engineer, and I'll be working there full-time this coming spring after my spring semester and graduation. And I've stayed involved with FTC as an FTA, either FTA or assistant, and a game announcer / MC. So I think what we're going to do here is we're going to do kind of a frequently asked questions style discussion, if you will, where Kelly and I will kind of have an informal conversation about how being an alumni has shaped our young adult lives so far. So Kelly, do you want to kick us off and talk about how first impacted your college decision?
Yeah, so I'm currently at Yale right now, and a lot of people don't really associate Yale with engineering and all of that. But back at the First Dean's List lunch at World Championships in 2017, they had a speaker from Yale University who is the Deputy Dean of Engineering and Applied Sciences, speak to all the Dean's List finalists about why they should attend Yale, why it's such a great engineering school. And then that was reinforced later when I attended the First Dean's List Summit. So I decided to apply. I also applied to a couple other very engineering focused schools. And when it came time to make my decision, and looking at all the places where I had gotten accepted, I really was looking for a place that kind of continued the first values and all of that, and presented me a lot of opportunities. And when I visited Yale's campus, it was just such a collaborative place. And I knew that was one of the places I want to be, because through First I learned I liked that type of environment, and I wanted to continue to be supported in that way. So that ended up being one of the major factors why I chose Yale.
Awesome. And then for me, I don't really have an answer specific to Case Western, but rather I wanted to talk about a subset of schools that Case Western is a part of, and that would be the subset of schools that offer First Tech Challenge scholarship opportunities. So for all you out there, especially any juniors or seniors, I'd highly encourage you when you're looking around for schools to take a look at First's website, because they have a list of around 200 schools that provide, I think it's roughly a cumulative 80 million or so in scholarship money every year. So my school, Case Western, is a part of that program, and I was fortunate enough to receive one. And frankly, college can be expensive, so having that additional money to offset costs goes a long way. So again, I'd highly recommend that for any upperclassmen on the call, you take a look at some of the first scholarship opportunities that a lot of colleges offer.
And not just seniors, there are some scholarships for juniors. I got a scholarship for RPI that I had to apply for in my junior year. So start looking early. So even if you're not in your senior year on this call, it never hurts to start looking at that database. And a lot of the scholarships aren't binding. It's not if you get the scholarship, you have to go to that school.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tyler, how has First impacted career opportunities for you?
Sure. Well, I guess on a very general sense to start off with, as I'm sure any returning First participants can attest to, once you go through the First Tech Challenge program, you really do gain a pretty robust and well-rounded skill set. And one of the big takeaways too is it's a very collaborative environment that you don't get from a lot of typical extracurriculars, if you will. And just having those skills alone will undoubtedly help set you apart as part of that career search process. To talk about my experience in particular, as I mentioned before, I worked at Rockwell Automation. So I actually started out with Rockwell Automation going in my senior year of high school as throughout one of their high school programs called the Rockwell Engineering Pathways Program. And that program, as well as other internships and co-ops at Rockwell, actively seek out talent from FIRST programs for their talent pipeline, if you will. So between being able to network with people from Rockwell at FIRST events and having that skill set, those both really help set me apart in the interview and application process. Because especially here in the Northeast Ohio region, where Rockwell has a big presence, a lot of the volunteers and mentors and coaches work with Rockwell and can help them as well, help their students get to know more about the company and talk about opportunities there. So without First Tech Challenge, I frankly may not have even known Rockwell was in my own backyard, not even considered them for a career. So Kelly, I know you were at Dell this past summer. Do you want to talk about how First impacted your opportunities there?
Yeah, so like Tyler, I got my start at Rockwell Automation for a couple of years. But when I came to college, I wanted to try some other opportunities, see what was out there. So one of the things that first kind of inspired within me was being very involved in fighting for gender equity within the realm of engineering and computer science. So I got involved with several groups on campus, such as the Society of Women Engineers. So last year I went to the Society of Women Engineers National Conference, where I talked to several different companies, and several of them actually mentioned in particular that they were first sponsors, that they had been through the program before. So I have First on my resume to this day. I don't think I'm ever going to take it off, because even just saying you volunteer for First is just such a great thing, and so many companies and people can relate to it, that it's just a really great thing to have on there. So through that conference, I actually ended up getting an offer at Dell. So I was there this past summer working as a software engineering intern on their digital supply chain team. And First is another great kind of like breaking the ice type of thing. A little more than halfway into my internship one day, my manager and I were just kind of having a casual chat. And he said, "Oh, I think I remember hearing you saying that you were involved in First." Well, it turns out he had started one of the first FRC teams, not like the first, but like they had one of the lowest numbers. So we started pulling up videos of our different teams and comparing stories and talking about how amazing the program was. So without opportunities that First gives you, you don't have those bonds, and you really never know how many people are involved in First until you start entering the career force and seeing it firsthand for yourself.
Yep, absolutely. Kelly, do you also want to talk about some of the skills you learned from First?
Yeah, one of the greatest things I think First teaches you, not just what you do like, but what you don't like. So when I entered my senior year, I actually applied to most of the schools as electrical engineering. However, I quickly learned throughout that senior year that I was definitely not an electrical engineering major, which is okay, but I learned that very on in my career, and entering college, I switched my major to computer science, and I'm still computer science to this day. A lot of people entering school for engineering that I've seen have switched their engineering major a couple times, and maybe that's put them behind. So being able to learn that before entering school, I think, has been a great thing for me, because now I kind of have more open time in my schedule to take courses I actually like rather than playing catch up. And in terms of a non-technical skill, I really do think the teamwork and collaboration skills are incredibly important, whether it's working on school projects, whether it's, for the internships I've had, just being able to balance different personality types, being able to work in a team, being able to understand, like, when people get frustrated, how to walk away and take a break, how to support people. I think that, is one of these most important skills you can have. So the fact that First gives you that opportunity to experience that before you enter the career setting is something that's really great.
Yeah, and I guess
What about you, Tyler?
I kind of have a similar experience. I learned throughout my early days in FTC that mechanical engineering type stuff is not my forte. I just don't have that mechanical mind, and frankly, things I made usually fell apart pretty quickly. or didn't withhold to the rigors of competition. But I definitely fell in love with computer science and basics of control theory, because at my time, my high school didn't have AP computer science. So without FIRST, I may never have really gotten to have those deep dives into the world of programming that um, that were pretty formative in choosing computer science as my major. Because kind of like what Kelly said, I was able to go into college saying, "Oh, computer science is definitely for me." And I really want to take some classes that emphasize some of the control theory stuff as well. Because hey, this is what I did in FTC, and I really loved it. And I found myself working on autonomous programming, into like the early hours of like 1 and 2 a.m. on most nights, and researching different control theory concepts. So that's definitely one of the big technical takeaways and things I learned. But also from a non-technical perspective, oftentimes students don't realize how much FIRST does prepare you in that space. So as Kelly mentioned, communication skills is a big thing. Even though our team was relatively small, we still had to learn how to coordinate schedules with each other, given all we did outside of FTC and how busy classwork can be. But even beyond that schedule coordination, we also learned a lot about project management, especially given that I usually worked on software. We had a mechanical team and like a 3D printing team, and we had to all figure out timeframes that would ensure we get a robot ready a few weeks before competition to give us time to practice. So we learned a lot about coordinating schedules, project management, communication, and also conflict resolution was a big thing too. Although in a perfect world, you wouldn't ever have conflict. It frankly arises in lots of different circumstances more often than you'd think, just part of human nature. But being able to learn how to handle conflict effectively at a younger age has definitely paid dividends in my career, and has probably saved me a few times from making mistakes in the conflict resolution process or escalating a situation and making it worse. So getting these experiences early on in a space where it's kind of safe to fail and learn from your mistakes definitely is really helpful throughout your career.
And something else I want to mention, going back to skills and stuff, one of the most common questions you get especially for CS interviews and engineering interviews, when you go to interview for like internships and full-time roles, I get it all the time, is why are you majoring in computer science? And the fact that my story is, well, I went to the robotics in high school and middle school, and I kind of spell out the story of FIRST versus other people who say, well, computer science pays well, or, oh, I thought it was cool. I think that is something that definitely makes you stick out a lot more than those other people who may not have the background you have, and it's definitely more interesting to recruiters than just, anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kelly, do you also
Okay,
want to talk
Tyler.
about,
Do you want me to go first? I can't.
Sure. Do you want to talk about what you would have done differently to take advantage of FIRST?
Yes. Like I mentioned before, I quickly learned I was not like the mechanical, electrical engineering type back in high school. But with that being said, I do kind of wish I had pushed myself a little more to step outside my comfort zone. I think, a lot of us did FLL when we were younger, and I always think back to, well, if I had never touched FLL programming and stepped outside my comfort zone there, then I never would have gotten into programming for FTC and later on. So looking back, I kind of wish I had done the same for FTC. I do think I stepped out in my comfort zone in many ways, but I wish I would have done so more. And also just looking back to the competitions and the teams and all of that, I think that when you're in the moment and you're in your final competition, or even in this virtual year, you might not appreciate it as much, but then when you graduate and get into college and then life starts kind of being thrown at you, and now you're thinking about job opportunities and all that stuff, you kind of miss just having those days where maybe your team's in the biggest fight, or maybe you're just extremely frustrated with someone because the design you made isn't, working out right or anything. But it's those moments that you really miss in college, and you miss just those long nights where everything seems like it's falling apart, but you're there with your team.
Yeah, good
What
point.
about you, Tyler?
Yeah, this one was kind of tough for me. Nothing really jumped out as something I wish I would have done differently per se. So I guess I'll share something I didn't realize till I was an upperclassman that I wish I would have known earlier on in the prior years. And that would be making an effort to get to know other teams and students. It's so easy to kind of spend competition day or scrimmages hanging out with only your team and people you know well. But tournaments are a great way to really get to meet new people, network with other teams. And it's especially true as you kind of move your way up the advancement ladder, because you'll get to make friends from around the state, country, and perhaps world that you may not have crossed paths with if it weren't for FIRST Robotics. Um, I mean, I was definitely guilty early on in my first career of hanging out with just my team, but my junior year definitely changed when I started to, become less of an introvert. And I started to do more scouting, talking to more teams, so on and so forth. And I met a lot of people that I still keep in touch with to this day. And I'll touch about this later when we're talking about staying involved with FIRST. But it's really awesome to run into these same people when we're all volunteering and coming back from our colleges and jobs to all volunteer at the same event. I guess one particular anecdote that sticks out is at the World Championship. If you've been there, you'll know that they have like an exhibit hall where different colleges and employers kind of showcase themselves and try to do some recruitment, convince you to check them out. And it's really kind of fulfilling and awesome to walk those hallways and see a lot of your friends representing their schools and employers to try to recruit the next generation of thinkers. And it's really cool to see friends volunteering as well. It's a really great and humbling reminder of just how important and impactful we collectively are as alumni and volunteers in the FIRST world, and FIRST students as well. The work you guys do, you guys really are the next generation of thinkers and problem solvers. And it's awesome to be able to come back and help you figure out what your next steps are and get you in touch with different companies and colleges, because the work you're doing now will definitely be really impactful, and the skills you gain will really pay dividends throughout your career and help you really change the world. Not to use a cliche, but it is true.
So Tyler, then, why don't you tell us about how you leverage FIRST in college and in your career?
Yeah, so I know we kind of touched on it briefly with some of the technical skills stuff and career development stuff, but especially in college, a lot of the communication skills and project management skills are really useful in group projects, because a lot of groups, frankly, always, well, not always, but you often hear people complaining about group work and how things fall into disarray. A lot of the skills I learned in FIRST helped me learn how to deal with those types of situations effectively, make sure people have clear-cut understandings of their tasks and are engaged in a project, all while mapping out a time frame for the thing. So that's definitely been helpful throughout my college career. And on top of that too, just having an introduction to some of the technical concepts has really gone a long way, because it's one thing to read about some control theory thing in a textbook or some computer science concept in a textbook, but it's another thing to have worked with it a few years prior or back in FIRST when you're doing it in a hands-on way through trial and error and actually affecting change with the robot on the field. That sticks out with you way more than memorizing some control equations like a PID loop in a textbook ever will, at least in my opinion. So it's really been useful in that part. And even from a career perspective, you have a lot of the same technical concepts popping back up. And even if it's not the exact same technical concepts, or even if you're not going to a computer science field, FIRST really does teach you a very good way of thinking, in my opinion. You learn how to problem solve effectively, break down and digest information effectively. And regardless of what your career path is or where you go after high school, those skills will really help set you apart in your career and help you catalyze your career development and personal development. What about you, Kelly?
Yeah, also, like I said before, just the ability to work with other people, especially in like group projects and stuff, I think that's a skill that a lot of people don't have. Also, the ability to kind of lead those types of endeavors. I think it's kind of difficult sometimes for people to step up as being a leader of a student organization, as a team team project or in an internship as like a group intern project. So having those leadership skills and those foundations through FIRST, I think has really helped me in an abundance of different settings. And also, it's really nice just being able to connect with people so quickly. I think in FIRST we learn, you have to step outside of your comfort zone. For example, at competitions when you're scouting, you just have to walk up to a random person and initiate a conversation somehow, some way. I know for me, when I came to Yale, I did not know anyone, like no one from my high school really goes here. I didn't come in with like a whole group of friends or anything, and that was really nerve-wracking for me. But through experiences like FIRST, I know what it feels like to be in a room where, yeah, I know my team, but I don't really know anyone else, and being able to initiate those conversations and just kind of start talking about certain things and all of that. And also from more of a career setting, I kind of talked about this before in other senses, but for example, this last summer, like I said, I was at Dell and I was on a team of interns where we're doing an intern side project. And none of the interns had an internship before. Some of them obviously had worked with teams in schools and all of that, but they didn't really know what was going on. So using my experience with, like, for example, setting the deadlines and all of that, I was able to create kind of like a step-by-step plan for our team. Whereas, if we want a team of all people who had never really been in some type of setting like FIRST, we definitely would have been struggling to kind of get organized, set deadlines for ourselves, and create attainable goals. So I think that's something that's just really important.
And I guess one other quick anecdote about being a first alumni in college is oftentimes it's funny how you'll cross paths with people who you met when you were a first student. As Kelly said, there is kind of a shared experience with FIRST that helps you meet people in college. And even in general, it's kind of funny. I've been in a dining hall or in a library, and people have come up to me and they're like, "Oh, you look familiar. Were you on this FGC team by any chance?" Or, "Oh, I think we talked while scouting or doing alliance selection." And it's kind of funny how small of a world it is, frankly, to run into those same people at college that you crossed paths with briefly in a few conversations here or there during a competition day or something like that.
Or on the flip side of that, so 8% of Yale's undergraduate student body had participated in FIRST in high school, which is actually like a pretty big number when you think about it. So it was actually really funny because yesterday, like I don't know if everyone was here for this, but my quarantine period just ended. So I was going out to get boba with my friends, and there was a girl standing in line there wearing a robotics hat. So I said, "Hey, did you by chance happen to be on a FIRST team in high school?" And she had been on an FRC team. So just being able to kind of like recognize, everyone knows what a FIRST shirt looks like. Everyone knows like the volunteer shirts and all of that. So seeing people around campus, being able to go up to them and say, "Hey, did you do FIRST in high school?" And having that, common shared experience has led to a lot of great relationships for me.
Yeah, it definitely helps that around half of my wardrobe is shirts from different events and volunteering opportunities. So maybe I'm getting an abnormally high amount of first contact, but due to my style choices or lack thereof, perhaps, depending on the way you frame it. Anyway, Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit about why and how you stayed involved with FIRST over the years?
Yeah. As for the why, I hope it's kind of obvious to all of you why you should stay involved. For me, it was definitely just, it helped me so much. I couldn't imagine, one, just stepping away completely, and two, not helping the next generation get introduced to STEM and really help them like realize their future. And also it's just such a fun experience. I really wanted to help other people have that experience. As to how I've stayed involved, as I mentioned earlier, I'm the president of FIRST at Yale, the official alumni group at Yale University. So through FIRST at Yale, we volunteer at competitions. In the New England area, we also try to go to at least one champs every year. We also help out with FIRST Global, which is kind of like the Olympics of robotics that FIRST has started. So every year we mentor several different countries. We kind of split off into groups and help them succeed. And some of our members have flown out to the different competition locations. Like last year, one of our members went to Dubai to help out with them. And then we just mentor teams around the area, volunteer at competitions, as I mentioned, and just kind of overall just help out teams. We also do something called first office hours, where teams can sign up no matter where they are in the globe, and we will video call them and walk them through some problems that they're having. So yeah, what about you, Tyler?
Yeah, so to put it simply, it's a really fun way to stay involved, and I really do hope many current students decide to stick around when you're in college and beyond. I guess I'll start off by playing devil's advocate here. So I've had people, like acquaintances, when they hear I'm volunteering, say, "Well, aren't you just trying to relive your high school days?" Or, "Oh, why don't you just move on with your life and do something else?" And my big pushback to that is, when you volunteer, it's a whole new world and a whole new set of responsibilities and opportunities for growth. I definitely don't consider it like a peaked in high school type thing. There are definitely awesome ways to grow your career while volunteering and getting to know other people while volunteering, not to mention how rewarding it is to give back. So I guess to kind of talk about some of the ways I've developed, I started off volunteering in a purely technical role, but at one of the competitions a few years back, there was a last minute volunteer switch up, if you will, where one of the MCs and game announcers was a no-show. So I ended up fulfilling that role on the spot with no formal training, no formal experience prior to that. And it was one of those things I kind of fell in love with. And it was kind of a really great way for me to grow personally in terms of public speaking and, just kind of building up my confidence a little bit. And on more of a personal sense, volunteering has been a great way to really keep in touch with some of those old friends, as I mentioned before, while getting to travel to different cities and places for competitions. Like, it's kind of fun to explore Detroit with some old friends after hours. And also on top of all that, it's really a fulfilling way to kind of give back to a program that's done so much for me over the years. Because frankly, without FIRST being in my life the past decade, I don't know what the heck I would have turned out to be otherwise, to put it lightly. So whenever I volunteer, I always kind of go in hoping that I could at least make one student, sibling, parent, or whoever leave a little more excited about STEM and the opportunities in the STEM space. And if I succeed at that, I definitely know it was worth it to stay involved for that day. So all in all, I highly encourage you to stay involved with FIRST, because volunteering is really fun, especially not having the stress of, hey, is my robot going to fall apart? Or, hey, is my motor going to start smoking on the field? It's a lot more low pressure, and it's also a great way to, again, stay in touch with people, grow your network, and also gain some new skills along the way. So I know we're kind of short on time, so before we get into Q&A, I did want to provide our contact information here in case anyone wants to get in touch with us. So feel free to take a screenshot or make a quick note. And with that, are there any questions before we move on to our next session?
So how do you apply for First Dean's List? First Dean's List is something your coach nominates you for, either your sophomore or junior year. So your coach, you can choose up to 2 members of your team. Your coach will write an essay and submit it to, I forget where they submit it, but all the information's online, like what should be in the essay and everything. And then at the first competition, or at whatever competition they're nominating you for, you will have an interview process, and then you kind of like work your way up the ranks depending on whether your interview goes well and they like your application and all of that stuff.
Anyone else?
So the question is, what is the best way to contact alumni? It depends on whether you want specific alumni or alumni at a certain school. But if you Google, I think it's just like FIRST alumni groups, there's a page on the official FIRST website that gives you a list of all existing FIRST alumni groups at different schools. And so you can contact them directly through the organization like that. Or if you're talking about specific alumni, a lot of people have it like on their LinkedIns and stuff. So you can go ahead and go through that route.
I'll take Claire's question real quick. Then it looks like the PTC Creo user also has a question. So Claire, answering your question about how to volunteer if your school doesn't have a FIRST alumni program, I can speak from experience there, since Case Western doesn't have a formal student group. My big recommendation would be, while you're still a student, to get to know some of your tournament directors in your local area, or if you're going to school in the same state, like I'm going to school in Ohio, stay in touch with the program, because oftentimes they'll put out like call for volunteers, where they'll say, hey, we need volunteers to apply on the first website. And even if you aren't on those mailing lists, you can even go on the firstinspires.org website and go to the volunteer dashboard and search for events in your area, and it'll say if they need volunteers and what roles they need. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that and just start applying, because even though you have to like apply for the role, they're not going to really like turn you down. Like, like if you're willing to help out, they'll take it. So I highly encourage you to take the initiative and to either look on the first website or stay in touch with your region's program. And if you're going to school in a new part of the country or somewhere else, don't be afraid to cold call or reach out saying, hey, I am a freshman at this school. I just started. I did first back in high school, and I'm looking to volunteer. Can you talk about some of the opportunities? And I'm sure you'd get a friendly response.
From a mentor standpoint, we did have a team at one point where he graduated and he was going to go to college here from Indiana. He was on Tobar. And so the head of Indiana sent out a call if there's any teams who would like a mentor. And we took him. Oh yeah, I'll take a mentor. So that's something you can do. Throw a shout out. I'm going to come in your area. Are there any teams who would like help?
Yeah, don't be afraid to cold call or like send out an email, because for the team, you're getting a lot of benefit at virtually zero cost. So it's kind of a no-brainer for teams to take the mentorship, even if it's fairly informal, or to or to recruit volunteers and let college-age kids volunteer at events, especially if they were part of First as well. It definitely helps things go smoothly, and there's less of a ramp-up time compared to people who are new to the program and are just volunteering as a relative newcomer.
So I think we are running into the next session. So I know there might be more questions, but I think we're going to save those. You have our contact information, so feel free to reach out to either Tyler and I if you have any further questions.
Oh, we did miss the code word. Andy, do you
Listen,
want to?
I had not gotten a chance. You guys were doing such a wonderful job. I said I didn't want to interrupt you, but our code word for this session, it's probably the best one yet, is chinchilla. Chinchilla is the code word for this particular session. So again, not very easy to word fit that one in. I said I loved the one first thing this morning, made it easy to work in, but chinchilla for this one. I want to thank Kelly and Tyler for their time today. They did an awesome job explaining how their experiences, their soft skills, and their technical skills have helped them as they've progressed beyond First and in their college careers. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you everyone for attending. I appreciate the time.
And then our next session, we should get a good group this time. A lot more people showing up. We are the only group for this 11:15 to 11:55 session. We got a team roundtable with the innovators, Nuts and Bolts, Bionic Tigers, the Nuts, the Antidote, and Beak Squad 7-8 coming up at 11:15. So you guys stick around, and we will start that one off at 11:15. Thank you guys so much for coming.